The coffee mug shattered against the break room floor, spraying hot liquid across the tile. Landry had Piper backed against the counter, his arm blocking her escape route, body leaning uncomfortably close to her trembling form. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on me with a desperate plea I'd seen too many times on too many faces. "Need something?" Landry asked without turning, his voice dripping with irritation at the interruption. I placed myself between them, forcing him back a step. "Actually, yes. I need you to stop cornering women in this office." The silence felt electric. Piper seized her chance to slip away, clutching her folder against her chest like a shield. "Excuse me?" Landry's signature smirk appeared, the one that said he knew exactly what game he was playing. I stepped closer. "You heard me. I need you to stop trapping women in corners. Stop whispering things that make their skin crawl. Stop touching them when they've made it clear they don't want it." His eyes narrowed, that smirk momentarily faltering. "Who exactly do you think you're talking to?" "I know exactly who I'm talking to," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "The question is, do you know who you're talking to?" Landry glanced around the break room, reassuring himself no one else was watching. "Look, Sybil, I don't know what your problem is." "Barcelona," I said quietly, maintaining eye contact. The color drained from his face. "I know about Barcelona," I continued. "About what happened on the hotel balcony with Mina. About the elevator incident with Jeanette. About how you followed Krista to her room." His throat bobbed as he swallowed. "You're bluffing. The board meeting starts in 30 minutes. I've requested to speak. Want to walk there together?" He bolted from the room. Before I continue this story, I want to ask, have you ever witnessed someone getting away with terrible behavior just because they had connections? It happens more often than we think. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button, leave a comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe to hear more stories that need to be told. Now, back to what happened next. My name is Sybil Moreau. I'm not someone who stands out in a crowd. Average height, brown hair usually pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, and the kind of face people sometimes think they've met before, but can't remember where. This invisibility had become my greatest asset. I worked as a compliance analyst, a job title most people's eyes glaze over when I mention it. My role involved reviewing internal processes, looking for inconsistencies, gathering data, and identifying patterns. I was good at my job precisely because I noticed things others didn't. 8 months ago, I joined the company fresh from a similar position at a smaller firm. During my first week, I watched Landry isolate Daphne, a marketing coordinator, in the copy room. His body language, the way he leaned in, the unmistakable discomfort in her posture, it triggered alarm bells. "Don't," my manager Whitney whispered when she caught me watching. We were sharing lunch in the courtyard. "He's the VP's nephew. Untouchable. For your own career, stay quiet." Whitney's warning wasn't unique. Over the next few weeks, I heard variations of the same advice from long-term employees. "That's just how things are. Nothing can be done. Best to keep your head down." What these well-meaning colleagues didn't realize was that keeping my head down wasn't in my nature. Not anymore. 3 years earlier, at my previous job, I'd experienced similar behavior from a senior executive. I'd reported it through proper channels, trusted the system, and ended up being the one pushed out while he received a promotion. The betrayal taught me that official processes often protect predators, not victims. So I began watching Landry with methodical attention. His pattern emerged clearly. He calculated the timing of his advances, always ensuring they were just private enough to avoid witnesses but not so isolated as to seem deliberate. He chose vulnerable targets, new hires without established workplace allies, contract workers afraid for their job security, single mothers who couldn't risk unemployment. Most revealing was how he leveraged the company's unspoken politics. His uncle Harmon, the vice president of operations, had built a protective fortress around his nephew through strategic hiring and promotions of loyalists. HR complaints mysteriously disappeared. Women requesting transfers were labeled difficult. Those who pushed too hard often found themselves with negative performance reviews. I made myself invisible, blending into the background of meetings, lingering in hallways, becoming the forgettable face people spoke freely around. I built relationships with administrative assistants, maintenance staff, and security personnel, the eyes and ears of any organization who see everything while remaining unseen themselves. The company retreat to Barcelona 4 months ago provided my first real opening. 3 women had separate incidents with Landry during that trip. What he didn't know was that I spoke fluent Spanish, having lived in Madrid for 5 years as a teenager. I befriended the hotel staff who had witnessed his behavior, who shared details about how they'd been called to handle situations involving the American executive. I also began connecting with former employees who'd left because of Landry. Coffee meetings, lunch conversations, building a network of women with similar experiences. Not for gossip, but for truth. For pattern recognition. For months, I gathered information methodically. I wasn't building a legal case. I'd learned the hard way those could be dismantled. I was assembling something more powerful, a collective truth too consistent to dismiss. Then Piper arrived. 22 years old, first corporate job, supporting her younger siblings while their mother battled cancer. I recognized Landry's predatory interest immediately during her introduction meeting when her hands trembled as she spoke. The way he lingered after, offering to show her around, his eyes tracking her movements in the hallways. I'd warned her subtly, as I had others. But Piper's vulnerability made her an ideal target. When I walked into the break room and saw her trapped against the counter, something inside me finally snapped. After Landry fled the break room, I helped Piper collect herself. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Nobody's ever. They all just look away." "Not anymore," I promised, squeezing her hand. I returned to my desk, heart pounding. I'd accelerated my timeline, forced my hand. The company network pinged with a notification, emergency board meeting at 2 p.m. I hadn't actually requested to speak. That had been a bluff. But Landry clearly believed me capable of it. My phone buzzed with text messages from Whitney. "What did you do?" Followed by, "Harmon is furious." Then, "Landry's saying you threatened him." I didn't respond. Instead, I sent out the message I'd prepared months ago, ready for this exact moment. A group text to 17 current and former employees who had shared their experiences with me. "It's happening. Today, 2 p.m., boardroom." By 1:30, my office phone rang. The board assistant's voice was clipped. "Miss Moreau, your presence is requested in the board meeting." "I'll be there," I replied calmly. I spent the next 20 minutes reviewing my notes, not for preparation but for reassurance. Then I locked my computer, straightened my blazer, and headed to the elevator. The boardroom occupied the top floor, with windows overlooking the city. 12 people sat around the massive table, their faces arranged in various expressions of concern and annoyance. Harmon sat at the head, his resemblance to Landry unmistakable in their shared jawline and cold eyes. "Miss Moreau," he began as I took the sole empty chair. "My nephew claims you've created a hostile work environment, that you're spreading malicious rumors and making threats." My heart sank even as I'd anticipated this exact scenario. I'd risked everything, and now faced termination. Possibly worse if they decided to pursue legal action for defamation. Harmon continued, "Such behavior violates numerous company policies." "Before you continue," I interrupted, my voice steadier than I felt. "You should know, I'm not alone in this." Confusion flickered across Harmon's face. Before he could respond, the boardroom door opened. Devra, the chief financial officer, the only woman in senior leadership, entered first, followed by Whitney. Behind them came Piper, still visibly shaken but standing tall. Then more faces appeared. Jeanette from accounting, Mina from graphic design, Krista from client relations. 5 current employees, standing together in silent solidarity. Behind them came 7 more women I'd connected with over the past months. Former employees who had coordinated their schedules and traveled from as far as 3 hours away to attend. Then came 2 women clients who had experienced Landry's behavior during business dinners. The board members' expressions transformed from annoyance to shock as more and more women filed in, lining the walls of the room. "What is the meaning of this?" Harmon demanded, half rising from his chair. I stood to face him. "You wanted to discuss hostile work environments. We all have stories, and we're all prepared to tell them, here today, or publicly, if necessary." The atmosphere in the boardroom shifted instantly. Harmon's expression hardened, but Devra, the CFO who had remained largely silent in previous meetings, spoke up. "Perhaps we should listen before deciding anything," she said, her calm voice carrying an unmistakable undercurrent of authority. "This is highly irregular," protested Thurston, the general counsel, his fingers nervously adjusting his tie. "We can't just have random employees bursting into a board meeting making accusations without—" "Without what?" Devra interrupted. "Without enough women to fill this entire room?" without potential legal liability that could sink this company's reputation permanently? Without clear violation of every ethics policy we claim to uphold? A tense silence followed. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. I move that we hear what these women have to say, said Bennett, the oldest board member, his weathered face grave. If there's truth here, we need to address it, now. For the next hour, woman after woman spoke. No dramatic evidence, no secret recordings, just raw, painful truths that painted an undeniable pattern. Mina described the Barcelona incident, how Landry had cornered her on the hotel balcony during the company retreat. He told me my promotion was being considered, and that he had significant influence with his uncle. Then he put his hand on my lower back and said he had a nice view from his room he wanted to show me. Jeanette spoke next. In the elevator, he pressed against me when we were alone. When I objected, he laughed and said I should learn to take a compliment. The next day, I found my project reassigned. Former employees shared similar stories spanning 3 years. A pattern emerged of isolation, proposition, and retaliation. Women who rejected him found themselves with poor performance reviews, lost opportunities, or suddenly not fitting company culture. Throughout the testimonies, I watched the board members' faces transform. Some showed shock, others displayed growing anger. A few, including Harmon, maintained carefully neutral expressions that betrayed nothing. Harmon tried interjecting several times. These are serious allegations without. I wasn't finished, said Krista, cutting him off with surprising force for someone who normally spoke so softly. After Barcelona, I reported the incident to HR. 2 weeks later, I was put on a performance improvement plan for communication issues. The HR report, mysteriously missing from the system. Whitney stepped forward then. As a manager, her testimony carried particular weight. I've witnessed Landry's behavior for years. I'm ashamed to admit I advised women to keep quiet for their own protection. I was complicit in this culture of silence, and I'm here today because I refuse to be part of it anymore. Piper spoke last, her voice trembling but determined. I've only been here 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and already I've been cornered twice. Today wasn't even the first time. I need this job to support my family while my mom fights cancer. He knew that. He mentioned it specifically when he said, I hope nothing jeopardizes your position here. The room fell silent when she finished. 17 women, 17 stories, all pointing to the same conclusion. Thurston cleared his throat. While these accounts are concerning, they remain allegations without. If you say without evidence one more time, I interjected, I'll have to wonder why you're so invested in dismissing consistent testimonies from nearly 20 women. Devra nodded. The pattern here is unmistakable, and patterns are evidence. Harmon finally spoke, his voice carefully controlled. These are serious claims requiring proper investigation. We'll need to convene HR and legal teams to review. No, I said simply. All eyes turned to me. No more internal investigations that disappear. No more HR reports that vanish. No more women pushed out while Landry remains protected. I placed a folder on the table. This contains the names and contact information of every woman in this room, plus 12 others who couldn't be here today. We're prepared to take this public, all of us, if appropriate action isn't taken immediately. You're threatening the company? Harmon's voice rose sharply. I'm promising transparency, I corrected. Something this company claims to value in every mission statement and annual report. Bennett leaned forward. What exactly are you asking for? Immediate suspension of Landry pending a third-party investigation. Policy changes to protect employees from retaliation, and a commitment to take every harassment claim seriously, regardless of who it involves. I paused. We've prepared a detailed proposal. This feels like extortion, Harmon said. His face flushed. It's accountability, Devra countered. She turned to the other board members. I move that we immediately suspend Landry Mitchell pending investigation, and that we hire an independent firm to conduct said investigation. I further move that we establish a committee to review and strengthen our harassment policies. I second, said Bennett immediately. This requires further discussion, Harmon protested. Then let's discuss, Devra replied coolly. Shall we start with potential legal liability? Or perhaps the PR nightmare if 30 women go public with consistent harassment claims? Or maybe we should discuss the fiduciary responsibility this board has to protect the company from precisely this sort of exposure? The vote was taken. 9-3 in favor of Devra's motion. Harmon and 2 of his closest allies were the only opposition. Miss Moreau, Devra said as the meeting concluded, Please have your group submit your policy recommendations by the end of the week. I'll be heading the committee personally. As we filed out of the boardroom, Whitney caught my arm. How did you do this? How did you get all these women to speak up? I listened. I replied simply, and I believed them. The next 3 days passed in a blur of meetings, statements, and tension. Landry was noticeably absent, having been escorted from the building immediately after the board vote. Harmon remained in his office, door closed, emerging only for essential meetings. On Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Parking garage. Level 3. Now. I hesitated, showing the message to Whitney. Don't go alone, she advised, concern etched on her face. I won't, I promised, texting Devra and security simultaneously. The parking garage was dimly lit as always. I stepped off the elevator onto level 3, Devra and a security officer flanking me. Landry stood beside his luxury car, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled, eyes bloodshot. You've ruined everything, he said when he saw me, voice slurring slightly. Happy now? My uncle can't protect me anymore. You ruined yourself, I replied calmly. I just made sure people knew the truth. He laughed bitterly. Truth? You don't know anything about me. I know enough. He took a step toward me, but the security officer moved forward. Landry stopped, swaying slightly. The investigation starts tomorrow, Devra said coldly. I suggest you cooperate fully, and I strongly advise you to leave the premises immediately. Your access has been revoked. Landry's eyes narrowed. This isn't over. Actually, it is, I replied. The next morning, I arrived at work to find people gathered around monitors, whispering. Piper rushed up to me. Have you seen? It's everywhere. On the screens were news reports. Tech executive dismissed following harassment allegations. Landry's face appeared next to corporate statements about zero tolerance and thorough investigations. More shocking was the second headline. VP of Operations resigns amid nephew's harassment scandal. Harmon had resigned that morning, effective immediately. His departure statement mentioned taking responsibility for oversight failures and personal reasons. Whitney appeared beside me. Did you know this would happen? I shook my head. I expected resistance, stonewalling, not this. Something doesn't add up, Whitney murmured. Harmon wouldn't just step down. She was right. The sudden resignation felt wrong. Too easy, too clean. Harmon had built his career on never admitting defeat. This capitulation was out of character. Later that day, Devra called me into her office. The third-party investigators start tomorrow, she said without preamble, but there's something you should know. She slid a tablet across her desk. On it was an internal email from Harmon to the board, sent minutes before his resignation. The language was formal, the tone resigned, but one line stood out. In light of information, Miss Moreau apparently possesses regarding Barcelona, I believe my continued leadership would only further damage the company. I stared at the words, confused. I never said I had information about Harmon in Barcelona, only about Landry. Devra's expression was unreadable. Interesting, yet Harmon clearly believes otherwise. A chill ran down my spine. What had happened in Barcelona that Harmon thought I knew about? What connection did it have to Landry's behavior? The investigation just got more complicated, Devra said. Whatever happened there, Harmon was willing to resign rather than have it exposed. I left her office with more questions than answers. In the hallway, my phone buzzed with a notification from a secured messaging app I'd installed months ago. The sender was one of the hotel staff from Barcelona I'd befriended. The message was brief. You should see this. Deleted from our security archives yesterday, but I made a copy. Attached was a video file. My hands trembled as I found an empty conference room to watch it. The timestamp showed 2:14 a.m. during the company retreat. The footage showed a hotel corridor. Landry appeared, supporting a clearly intoxicated woman. Not an employee, but someone I recognized as the wife of a major client. Moments later, Harmon appeared from another direction, looking agitated. Words were exchanged. No audio, but the body language showed clear tension. Then Harmon grabbed the woman's other arm. Together, uncle and nephew half-carried, half-dragged her toward an elevator. The video ended there. I sat frozen, my mind racing. This wasn't just about Landry. This was about Harmon too, and possibly others. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Whitney. Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow morning. Something big is happening. The next day dawned with a sense of foreboding. Whatever came next would change everything, not just for me, but for every woman who had stepped forward, for the company itself. As I dressed for work, I received another text. This one from a number I didn't recognize. Be careful what you wish for. Not all monsters die when exposed to light. Some just change their hunting grounds. I stared at the message for a long moment, a knot forming in my stomach. Someone was trying to intimidate me. Someone who knew what was happening. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Devra before heading to work. The office atmosphere had transformed overnight. Groups of employees whispered in corners, conversations abruptly ending when others approached. Nobody knew exactly what was happening, but everyone sensed the ground shifting beneath their feet. Whitney intercepted me at the elevator. The boardroom is packed. Legal team, outside counsel, executives I've never even seen before. Any sign of Landry or Harmon? No, but rumor has it Landry hired one of those crisis management firms, the kind celebrities use after scandals. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. By 8:30, I was in Devra's office along with the company's head of security, a stoic woman named Ariel. The video you received is concerning, Devra said without preamble. Ariel has been investigating separately since yesterday. Ariel nodded. The woman in the video is Ivy Lambert, spouse of Gregory Lambert from Lambert Solutions. They're one of our biggest clients. Is she okay? I asked. That's where it gets complicated, Ariel replied. I contacted Mrs. Lambert. Initially, she denied anything happened in Barcelona. When I mentioned the video's existence, she became extremely distressed and hung up. Devra interjected. An hour later, Gregory Lambert called demanding to know why we were harassing his wife about ancient history. He threatened to pull their business. But the retreat was only 4 months ago, I pointed out. Exactly, Ariel said grimly. When I tried following up with hotel staff, they suddenly claimed no knowledge of any incidents. Someone got to them. That's not all, Devra added. The bank called this morning. Someone attempted to access confidential company financial records using my credentials. My mind raced. They're trying to cover their tracks. This goes beyond harassment. The question is how far beyond, Devra said, checking her watch. It's time. The boardroom was indeed packed. The entire board was present, along with the executive team, legal representatives, and several faces I didn't recognize. Notably absent were Landry and Harmon. Bennett called the meeting to order. As you're aware, serious allegations have emerged regarding Landry Mitchell's conduct. The third-party investigation begins today. However, new information has come to light that expands the scope considerably. Thurston, the general counsel, looked distinctly uncomfortable. Before we proceed, I must advise that what follows involves sensitive matters, potentially extending beyond workplace harassment into other areas. Bennett nodded to Devra, who stood. Yesterday, miss? Moreau received footage from the Barcelona hotel showing Landry Mitchell and Harmon Wade escorting an intoxicated female client to an elevator at 2:14 a.m. When contacted, the woman denied any recollection of events, but became distressed when informed of the video. Murmurs rippled through the room. Subsequently, Devra continued, attempts were made to access our financial records, particularly those relating to the Barcelona retreat and client entertainment expenses. Thurston cleared his throat. While disturbing, none of this constitutes proof of. I wasn't finished, Devra said sharply. This morning, I received this from an anonymous source. She tapped her tablet, and the screen behind her lit up with financial records, company credit card statements, showing unusual charges during multiple client events and business trips over the past 3 years. Barcelona was just the most recent. These expenses were coded as client entertainment, but lack proper documentation. All were approved by Harmon Wade. All involved events where Landry Mitchell was present, and all coincide with dates where female clients or their spouses later reported feeling unwell or having memory issues the following day. The room fell utterly silent. Bennett broke the silence. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, Devra replied carefully. I'm presenting financial irregularities that warrant investigation alongside the harassment claims. This is absurd, said Palmer, one of Harmon's allies on the board. You're trying to turn workplace harassment allegations into some sort of criminal conspiracy. I don't believe Miss Devra is making accusations, I interjected, standing. She's presenting patterns, and as she pointed out yesterday, patterns are evidence. The meeting dissolved into heated discussion. Legal advised caution. Some board members wanted to contain the situation. Others insisted on full transparency. Through it all, I watched the faces, noting who seemed genuinely shocked versus those who appeared merely concerned about damage control. After nearly 2 hours, Bennett called for order. We have no choice but to expand the investigation to include these financial irregularities and their potential connection to the harassment claims. If crimes were committed, we have a legal obligation to report them. And in the meantime, Palmer demanded, in the meantime, we cooperate fully with investigators, secure all relevant records, and ensure the safety of everyone involved, Bennett replied firmly. As the meeting concluded, Deborah pulled me aside. Be careful. This just got much bigger than workplace harassment. I know, I said quietly. Landry was scheduled for his investigative interview this afternoon. His lawyer just called to cancel. He's running, I said. Maybe, Deborah replied. Or maybe he's regrouping. Over the next 2 days, the investigation expanded rapidly. The outside firm brought in additional specialists. More women came forward, not just employees, but clients and vendors who had interacted with Landry and, in some cases, Harmon. The pattern became clearer and more disturbing. The harassment wasn't random, it was systematic. The worst incidents occurred at client events where alcohol flowed freely, and certain women, usually those with some connection to valuable accounts or partnerships, found themselves unusually affected by seemingly modest amounts of alcohol. I was working late Thursday evening, reviewing documents the investigators had requested, when Whitney burst into my office, pale-faced. Landry's back. He just walked into the building with 2 men I've never seen before. They went straight to the executive floor. My phone buzzed with a text from Deborah. My office. Now. I found Deborah standing at her window, staring out at the city lights. Landry demanded an emergency meeting with the executive team. Claims he has information that will change everything. What kind of information? He wouldn't say, just that it involves you. She turned to face me. Is there anything I should know? I shook my head. I've been completely transparent with you and the investigators. Good, she said, because they're here. Landry entered flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. His appearance had transformed, immaculate again, confident, with a smile that chilled me. Miss Moreau, he said smoothly, still leading your little crusade? I didn't respond. You know, he continued, setting a folder on Deborah's desk. When someone comes after me, I get curious about them, about their past, about what might motivate such vindictiveness. He gestured to one of his companions, who opened the folder. Miss Sybil Moreau. Except that wasn't always your name, was it? 3 years ago, you were Sybil Markham at Vertex Industries. My heart stopped. No one here knew about that time in my life. You filed harassment claims against a senior executive. Claims that were investigated and found to be, he paused dramatically, without merit. That's not what happened, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. The official record says otherwise, Landry continued. It says you fabricated claims after being passed over for promotion. It says you were let go for creating a hostile work environment. Ironic, isn't it? It says you tried to extort a settlement before leaving. That's a lie, I said, feeling my careful composure beginning to crack. They covered it up, just like you and your uncle have been doing. Landry smiled. The difference is we have documentation, official findings, court records from when your lawsuit was dismissed. What do you have? Stories? Coincidences? A grainy video showing my uncle and me helping an intoxicated woman to her room? Deborah studied me carefully. Is this true? You filed previous harassment claims that were dismissed? I felt the ground shifting beneath me. The exact scenario I'd feared was unfolding. My credibility under attack. My past weaponized against me. Yes, I filed a claim. I admitted. And yes, it was dismissed. Because the executive I reported was the CEO's son. Because HR buried it. Because witnesses suddenly couldn't recall what they'd told me in confidence. Just like what's been happening here, Landry smirked. Or perhaps because you have a pattern of making false accusations. That's enough, Deborah said sharply. Whatever Miss Moreau's past, we have testimony from nearly 20 women about your behavior, Landry. That stands on its own. Does it? One of Landry's companions spoke up. Because 4 of those women have already contacted us to recant their statements. Seems they were pressured by Miss Moreau to exaggerate incidents. We have signed affidavits. My blood ran cold. That's not possible. Jeanette, Krista, Daphne, and Lisa, the man read from his notes, all now say they felt coerced by you to paint normal workplace interactions as harassment. They're lying, I said, even as doubt crept in. Had they been threatened? Bribed? Talk to the others. We intend to, Landry said smoothly, but the pattern is already emerging. You orchestrated this witch hunt based on your own past grievances. Devra remained impassive. We'll need to see those affidavits and verify them independently. Of course, Landry replied. In the meantime, we believe Miss Moreau should be suspended pending investigation of her manipulation of company processes and coercion of colleagues. The room spun around me. Everything I'd worked for was unraveling, just like before, history repeating itself with merciless precision. This meeting is over, Devra said. Leave the documents. We'll review them and respond appropriately. After they left, I sank into a chair, my hands shaking. They're trying to discredit me to save themselves. I know, Devra said quietly, and it might work. 4 women recanting? They must have been threatened or paid off. Probably, Devra agreed. But proving that is another matter. This is exactly how these situations typically play out. Attack the whistleblower, divide the victims, create enough doubt to escape consequences. She paused. Unless what? A gleam appeared in Devra's eyes. Unless the whistleblower anticipated exactly this response. Did you? For the first time since Landry entered the room, I felt a flutter of hope. Actually, yes, I did. The next morning at 8 a.m., the board reconvened. Landry sat confidently at the table, his crisis team beside him. Harmon had returned as well. Though he was no longer acting as board chair, that position now belonged to Bennett. This emergency session is called to address new developments in the Mitchell investigation, Bennett began. Mr. Mitchell has presented evidence suggesting Miss Moreau manipulated the process and coerced testimony. Landry nodded smugly. Sadly, this appears to be a pattern with Miss Moreau, a vendetta carried over from her previous employment. Miss Moreau, Bennett turned to me. Do you wish to respond to these allegations? Yes, I said, standing. I do. I took a breath, looking around the room at the board members, at Landry's smug expression, at Harmon's tense posture. When you've been silenced before, I began, you learn to prepare differently the next time. At Vertex Industries, I trusted the system. I reported through proper channels. I believed truth would prevail. I was wrong. I moved to stand at the center of the room, where everyone could see me clearly. So yes, I have a past. One where I witnessed harassment, reported it correctly, and was systematically discredited and pushed out. Not because my claims weren't true, but because the truth threatened powerful people. Landry leaned toward his crisis manager, whispering something with a self-satisfied smile. When I joined this company and saw the same patterns emerging with Landry, I knew reporting through normal channels wouldn't work. The system was designed to protect him. So I approached things differently. I nodded to Devra, who distributed folders to each board member. What you're receiving is a detailed timeline. Every interaction I've had with the women who came forward. Every conversation, every meeting, all meticulously documented from day one. Landry's smile faltered slightly. You'll notice each interaction had at least one witness, someone else who was present or aware of the conversation. You'll find contact information for each witness. You'll also find that I never once suggested to any woman what to say or how to characterize her experiences. I simply asked, would you be willing to share what happened? I turned directly to Landry. You claim 4 women have recanted, that they felt coerced by me. Interesting, since I was never alone with any of them during our discussions. Bennett flipped through the documents, frowning. These are quite thorough. Page 12, I continued. You'll find emails from Jeanette dated yesterday morning, expressing fear after being contacted by an associate of Landry's, who mentioned her upcoming performance review and her daughter's college tuition. Murmurs rippled through the room. Page 17. Text messages from Krista describing a similar approach with references to her mortgage application currently under review at a bank where Harmon serves on the advisory board. Harmon shifted uncomfortably. I anticipated this, I said clearly. I knew if women came forward, there would be attempts to silence them. So I advised everyone to document any contact from Landry, Harmon, or their representatives. Bennett looked up sharply. Are you suggesting these women were pressured to recant? I'm not suggesting anything, I said, echoing Devra's words from earlier. I'm presenting patterns. Landry's crisis manager stood abruptly. These are serious accusations without foundation. Our clients have affidavits. Signed under duress, I interrupted, and we have contemporaneous documentation of that duress. I nodded again to Devra, who tapped her tablet. The screen behind me lit up with a video. Jeanette sitting in a coffee shop, openly recording on her phone as a man in an expensive suit sat across from her. So just to be clear, Jeanette's voice came through clearly. If I sign this paper saying Sybil Moreau manipulated me, my performance review next week will reflect exceptional achievement, and the tuition assistance program will suddenly find room in the budget for me? The man's response was measured but damning. Let's just say certain obstacles would disappear with your cooperation. Silence fell over the boardroom. That's Todd Beckman, Harmon said quickly. He doesn't work for me. I've never seen him before. Actually, Devra replied, according to company payment records, Mr. Beckman received 3 consulting payments from your discretionary budget in the past year. The most recent was Tuesday, the day after the board voted to suspend Landry. The crisis managers exchanged glances. Landry's confident demeanor cracked visibly. This is just one example, I continued. Each of the 4 women who supposedly recanted has similar documentation. They contacted me immediately after being approached. We prepared together. I placed my own folder on the table. But that's not all. Remember the video from Barcelona? It raised questions about what exactly happened that night with Ivy Lambert. Landry paled. Mrs. Lambert initially denied anything happened, then became distressed when the video was mentioned. Mr. Lambert threatened to pull their business. Classic signs of damage control. I paused, making eye contact with each board member in turn. Yesterday, Mrs. Lambert called me directly. Not the investigators, not HR, not legal, me. She found my contact information through a support group for harassment victims that I've been part of since my experience at Vertex. She was referred by another woman, a former client who had a similar experience at a company retreat last year. Harmon's jaw tightened. Mrs. Lambert doesn't remember much about that night in Barcelona. She remembers having 2 drinks at the client dinner. She remembers feeling strangely disoriented. Then, nothing until she woke up in her room the next morning, confused and physically uncomfortable. Her husband dismissed her concerns, told her she'd simply had too much to drink and embarrassed herself. He insisted they never speak of it again. The room remained utterly still. When the video surfaced, when our investigators contacted her, the fragments started coming back. She's now speaking with authorities in Spain. She's not alone. 3 other women connected to client accounts have come forward with similar experiences at events where both Landry and Harmon were present. Bennett looked directly at Harmon. Is this true? Harmon's face had become a mask. These are outrageous insinuations without the toxicology reports. I cut in. Mrs. Lambert had blood work done after our investigator contacted her. She found traces of a substance consistent with certain drugs known to cause memory loss. This is absurd, Landry finally exploded. You can't possibly believe. What I believe, Bennett interrupted, is that this situation has moved well beyond internal company matters. This board has a fiduciary and ethical responsibility to cooperate with proper authorities. He turned to the company's outside counsel. Contact the police immediately. We will turn over all information we have. You can't do that. Landry stood, panic, replacing his earlier confidence. Actually, we must, Bennett replied coldly. And you should both retain criminal defense counsel immediately. Harmon rose slowly. This isn't over. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, came a new voice from the doorway. I believe they do. A woman in a dark suit entered, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Detective Natara Reed. I have warrants for Landry Mitchell and Harmon Wade. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of legal language, Miranda rights, and the surreal sight of Landry and Harmon being escorted from the building in handcuffs. As the boardroom emptied, Devra approached me. How did the police get involved so quickly? I contacted Detective Reed 3 days ago, I admitted. After I received the Barcelona video, I recognized the pattern from cases I'd studied after my experience at Vertex. I didn't know if it would lead anywhere, but I wanted someone in law enforcement to be aware, just in case. You've been 3 steps ahead this whole time, Devra said with newfound respect. I had to be. It was the only way to make sure they couldn't silence the truth again. The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks. Landry and Harmon were charged with multiple offenses. Several former clients came forward with similar experiences, expanding the investigation. The company instituted sweeping policy changes, with Devra heading a new ethics committee. My role transformed too. Bennett offered me a position leading a newly created department focused on workplace culture and ethics. We need someone who understands these dynamics from the inside, he said. Someone who knows how to listen. 1 month after the arrests, I stood before a room of employees, conducting the first of many training sessions on recognizing and addressing harassment. The most important thing to understand, I told them, is that harassment thrives in environments where power goes unchecked. where complaints disappear, and where victims are isolated. Our job is to create the opposite kind of environment, one where concerns are heard, where patterns are recognized, and where no one is considered untouchable. Piper, now thriving in her role, approached me after the session. "I never thanked you properly," she said, "for standing up that day in the break room." "You don't need to thank me," I replied. "Just do the same for someone else when the time comes." She nodded seriously. "I will." That evening, I sat alone in my new office, reflecting on the journey. My revenge hadn't been what people might expect. I hadn't set out to destroy Landry or Harmon personally. I'd focused on systematically dismantling the protection that made them untouchable. The true revenge wasn't in their public humiliation or legal troubles, satisfying as those might be. It was in creating a coalition too powerful to silence. It was in transforming a culture that had protected predators into one that protected victims. It was in knowing that every woman who came after me would enter a workplace where her voice mattered. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reed. "Thought you'd want to know. 3 more victims came forward today. Cases dating back 5 years. Your work made that possible." I smiled. That was the revenge that mattered most. Not destruction, but reconstruction. Not punishment alone, but change that prevented others from suffering the same fate. The most brutal revenge isn't loud or violent. It's when someone realizes that everything they thought protected them has vanished, and everyone now sees them exactly as they are. If you've ever experienced or witnessed harassment in your workplace, know that you're not alone. Stories like this one happen every day, and it takes courage to stand up and speak out. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and justice in the face of adversity. And leave a comment below. Have you ever had to stand up against someone who seemed untouchable? Your experience might give someone else the courage they need to take that first step. Remember, the most powerful weapon against injustice is our collective voice. No one is truly untouchable when we stand together. The paper sliced open my fingertip as I pulled it from between the quarterly reports. A small drop of blood stained the corner of the note, but I barely noticed as I read the words that would change everything. Thursday, 2 p.m., Conference Room B. Start with performance concerns. Mention incomplete client profiles. Emphasize team complaints about attitude. Use liability twice. End with termination effective immediately. At the bottom, underlined 3 times. Revenge firing, deserved. My breath caught. I stared at Vernon's handwriting, the distinctive swooping Ys, the sharp angles of his capital letters. The same handwriting that had signed birthday cards, meeting agendas, and congratulatory notes over our 2 years working together. Now it mapped out my professional execution with the precision of a general planning a military strike. The office hummed with Tuesday afternoon energy around me, but I stood frozen, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. Vernon walked past, catching my eye with a friendly nod before noticing what I held. His face shifted, shock, fear, then something harder settling across his features. "That's private," he said, voice low but sharp. "Is it?" I whispered, looking down at the note again. "Because it seems to be about me." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Life isn't fair, Kit. Some people get everything handed to them. Others have to take what they deserve. And you deserve my job? I deserve not to be overlooked again." His eyes gleamed with something cold. "You should call in sick Thursday. Make this easier on yourself." As he walked away, I noticed our department head watching from across the room. She quickly turned back to her computer, but the brief eye contact confirmed my suspicion. She knew about this plan. Maybe she'd even approved it. 2 years of collaboration. Hundreds of projects completed together. Countless times I'd covered for Vernon's mistakes, or helped him understand procedures he struggled with. And this was my reward, a calculated ambush, disguised as a performance review, orchestrated by someone I'd considered, if not a friend, at least a respected colleague. The betrayal burned like acid in my throat. I tucked the note into my pocket and returned to my desk, mind racing. If Vernon had planned this, who else was involved? How long had this been brewing? And most importantly, what exactly was I going to do about it? I glanced at my calendar. Today was Tuesday. I had less than 48 hours until my scheduled professional execution. Hey, if you're enjoying this wild workplace betrayal so far, take a second to like and subscribe. Trust me, You'll want to see how Kit handles this backstabbing colleague, and I promise the revenge is worth sticking around for. Drop a comment with what you'd do in her shoes. Now, back to the story. My name is Kit Ashmore. Until finding that note, I'd believed I was respected at Powell Marketing. Not universally loved, perhaps, but valued for my contributions and work ethic. I'd started as an assistant 4 years ago and worked my way up to senior project manager through consistent results and long hours. When Director of Client Relations had opened up last month, I'd been quietly confident about my chances. Vernon had joined the company 2 years after me. I'd been assigned to train him, showing him our systems, introducing him to clients, even inviting him to lunch with our team his first week. He'd been charming, quick to learn, and eager to please. We'd worked well together, or so I'd thought. The signs had been there, though. The small comments when projects succeeded. Kit got lucky with the timing on that one. The way he'd interrupt me in meetings to rephrase my ideas as his own. The clients who suddenly requested to work with him instead of me, after years of solid relationships. I'd dismissed these as normal workplace friction. Competition was natural in our field. Not everyone became friends. But revenge firing? What had I done to deserve revenge? I spent Tuesday night dissecting every interaction with Vernon, searching for the trigger that had turned a colleague into an enemy. The pieces came together slowly. The director position, my recent commendation from the CEO, the major client who'd specifically requested me for their rebranding. Vernon hadn't wanted friendly competition. He'd wanted domination. Wednesday morning arrived with a headache and a plan forming. I arrived early, before most of the office, and headed straight to IT. "Morning, Kit," greeted Zoe, our systems administrator. "You're here early. Need a favor," I said, keeping my voice casual. "I think I accidentally deleted some important emails from last month. Any way to recover them?" Zoe pushed her glasses up. "Your deleted items folder should keep them for 30 days. Already checked. These would be from specific people." I slid her a post-it note with Vernon's name and our department head, Penny. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "This is unusual. It's for the Westbrook project review." I lied smoothly. "Need to verify some approval timestamps." Zoe hesitated, then nodded. "Give me an hour. I'll send what I find to your secure folder." I spent that hour organizing my desk, backing up personal files, and photographing my current project's status. If Thursday went as Vernon planned, I needed evidence of my work. At 10 a.m., I checked my secure folder. Zoe had come through magnificently. There, in neatly organized files, was my evidence. Dozens of emails between Vernon and Penny discussing my performance issues, dating back 3 months. Messages where Vernon claimed credit for my work. Forwarded client communications that had never reached me. The most damning email was from just last week. "Thursday's meeting is set. HR has reviewed the documentation and approved the termination based on the evidence provided. Kit won't see this coming. The director position announcement will go out Friday morning with your recommendation." My hands shook, but not from fear anymore. The betrayal had crystallized into something harder, colder. They hadn't just planned to fire me. They'd fabricated reasons, manipulated evidence, and scheduled my replacement before I even knew I was leaving. During lunch, I noticed Vernon and Penny in deep conversation by the break room. Vernon laughed, checking his watch before nodding emphatically. Penny patted his shoulder like a proud mentor. Celia from HR walked past my desk that afternoon, giving me a sympathetic smile that confirmed my suspicions further. The entire machinery of my termination was in motion, everyone playing their assigned roles. That evening, instead of going home, I drove to our biggest client's office. Marcus Hollister, CEO of Hollister Brands, had always appreciated directness. "Kit," he greeted me, surprised to find me in his lobby at 6 p.m. "Is something wrong with the campaign?" "No, but there's something you should know about tomorrow." I laid out what I'd discovered, showing him select emails that mentioned his account specifically. His expression darkened as he read Vernon's claims to have been the real creative force behind their successful rebrand. "This is concerning," Marcus said finally. "You've been our contact for 3 years. The work has been exceptional. Thank you. I'm not here to create problems, but I wanted you to know directly from me that changes might be coming. Vernon may claim he's been handling your account all along." Marcus folded his hands. "What do you need from me, Kit?" "Just the truth, if anyone asks." He nodded slowly. "I can do better than that." I left his office with my first ally, but I needed more. I spent that night making calls, sending emails, and preparing for Thursday's ambush. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by new ideas and contingency plans. By dawn, I felt hollow-eyed but resolute. Thursday morning brought artificial normalcy to the office. Colleagues avoided eye contact. Vernon practically bounced with barely concealed excitement. Penny emerged from her office only briefly, checking her watch with pointed significance when she saw me. At 1:45 p.m., my phone rang. "Conference room B has a plumbing issue," said the receptionist. "Your 2 p.m. meeting has been moved to the main conference room." My heart skipped. The main conference room had glass walls and totally visible to the entire office. They'd moved my humiliation to a fishbowl for maximum impact. At 1:55, I gathered my notebook, phone, and a slim folder. Vernon passed my desk, already wearing his victor's smile. "Good luck in there," he said, voice dripping with false concern. I looked up at him, keeping my expression neutral. "Thanks, Vernon. I think today will surprise everyone." His smile faltered slightly before he recovered. "Just remember, business isn't personal." "No," I agreed, standing to face him directly. "But betrayal always is." I walked into the main conference room at precisely 2 p.m. As expected, Penny sat at the head of the table, a thick folder before her. Vernon sat to her right, practically vibrating with anticipation. Celia from HR occupied the chair nearest the door, standard protocol for terminations. They'd positioned an empty chair with its back to the glass wall, ensuring my reaction would be on display for the entire office. I took a different seat, one that faced the door rather than the wall. "Kit, please sit here," Penny said, pointing to their chosen chair. "I'm more comfortable here, thanks," I replied, placing my slim folder on the table. "Since we're all being so transparent today." Vernon's eyes flicked nervously to the folder, then back to Penny, who cleared her throat. "We've called this meeting to discuss some concerns about your performance," Penny began, using the exact wording from Vernon's note. "There have been several issues that—" The conference room door opened, interrupting her. Marcus Hollister walked in, followed by his executive assistant. "Sorry I'm late," he said, though he hadn't been invited. Penny's mouth opened, then closed. "Mr. Hollister, we're in the middle of an internal meeting." "Yes, about Kit's performance," Marcus said, taking the seat beside me. "Since Hollister Brands represents 20% of your annual revenue, I thought my input might be relevant." Vernon's face had gone sheet white. Penny recovered more quickly. "While we appreciate your business, this is a private personnel matter." The door opened again. This time, it was Reggie Townsend, our CEO, accompanied by Diane from legal. "I invited them," I said quietly. Reggie took in the scene with narrowed eyes. "Penny, I understand you're conducting a performance review that might result in termination?" "Yes, sir. We have documented evidence of—" "Interesting," Reggie interrupted. "Since terminations at Kit's level require my approval, and I've received no such request." The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. Vernon looked like he might be sick. Penny's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing panic before she composed herself. "We were gathering the final documentation today to present to you," she said smoothly. I opened my folder and removed a single sheet of paper, sliding it across the table to Reggie. "Perhaps this documentation will help clarify the situation." It was Vernon's handwritten note, now laminated to preserve the small bloodstain from my paper cut. Reggie read it, his expression darkening. "Revenge firing?" he asked, looking at Vernon. "Would you care to explain this?" Vernon's mouth worked silently before he found his voice. That's not mine. Kit must have written it to frame me." I pulled out my phone. "Would you like to hear the recording of our conversation from Tuesday, when you confirmed writing it?" Vernon's eyes widened. "You recorded me? That's illegal." "Actually," Diane from legal interjected, "California is a two-party consent state, but our employee handbook clearly states that all workplace conversations may be recorded for quality assurance purposes. You signed acknowledgement of this policy when you were hired." Penny tried to regain control. "Regardless of this note, we have legitimate concerns about Kit's performance that—" "Like what?" Marcus Hollister interrupted. "Because from our perspective, Kit's work has been exemplary. In fact, we specifically requested her for our recent rebranding." "There have been communication issues," Penny insisted, opening her folder. "Multiple team members have reported." "May I see those reports?" Reggie asked. Penny hesitated before passing him several documents. Reggie scanned them, frowning. "These are all dated within the last 3 weeks, and they're all from employees who report directly to Vernon." He looked up. "Convenient timing, considering the director position announcement was scheduled for tomorrow." The glass walls now served a different purpose than Vernon and Penny had intended. Rather than showcasing my humiliation, they displayed their own increasingly desperate attempts to salvage their plan. Vernon cracked first. "This is ridiculous. Kit has been coasting on others' work for years. She's not qualified for the director position. I am." "Is that what this is about?" Reggie asked quietly. "The promotion?" "It should have been mine," Vernon hissed, abandoning pretense. "I've done everything right. Networked with the right people, put in extra hours, learned everyone's weaknesses, but it's never enough because perfect Kit is always there, stealing opportunities that should go to people who deserve them." The room went silent. Vernon seemed to realize what he'd admitted and sank back in his chair. "I think we've heard enough," Reggie said. "Diane, please escort Vernon to his desk to collect his personal items. His employment is terminated, effective immediately." Vernon stood so abruptly, his chair toppled backward. "You can't do this. Penny approved everything. She helped me plan it." All eyes turned to Penny, who had gone very still. "That's absurd," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I would never authorize something so unprofessional." I removed another document from my folder, the email where she had done exactly that. As Diane led a still protesting Vernon away, Reggie turned to Penny. "We'll continue this discussion in my office. Now." They left, leaving me alone with Marcus and Celia from HR, who looked shell-shocked. "I should go document something," Celia muttered, gathering her things and fleeing the room. Marcus turned to me with raised eyebrows. "Remind me never to cross you." I let out a shaky breath. I didn't want it to happen this way. "No?" He looked skeptical. "I wanted to expose the truth," I clarified. The method was their choice. As I left the conference room, colleagues quickly pretended they hadn't been watching. A few offered hesitant smiles. Others looked away guiltily. They'd known what was coming and said nothing. I returned to my desk, legs surprisingly steady, and began organizing my files as if it were any normal Thursday afternoon. But inside, I felt hollow. I'd survived the ambush, even turned it around on my would-be executioners, but the betrayal still cut deep. The truth was, Vernon and I had once been more than colleagues. We'd never officially dated, workplace romances being discouraged, but there had been late nights working on projects that turned into dinner, drinks, confidences shared. I'd believed we had a connection beyond the professional. Then came the Hollister rebranding pitch. We'd both worked on concepts, but in the final meeting, Marcus had strongly preferred my approach. I'd tried to acknowledge Vernon's contributions, but the client had been clear. They wanted my vision, my execution. After that, something changed. Vernon's friendly messages stopped. His assistants became reluctant, then non-existent. I'd attributed it to normal professional disappointment, never imagining the depth of resentment brewing beneath his friendly facade. I was collecting my things to leave when Reggie appeared at my desk. "Kit, do you have a moment?" We walked to his office in silence. Once inside, he gestured for me to sit. "Penny has been suspended pending further investigation," he said without preamble. "Her involvement appears more extensive than Vernon implied." I nodded, unsurprised. "The director position," he continued. "It was always going to be yours. The announcement was scheduled for Monday." "Monday?" I frowned. "Vernon's note mentioned Friday." "Exactly." Penny moved the timeline to create urgency for their plan. She told Vernon it was happening Friday to pressure him into acting quickly. Reggie leaned forward. "They were going to fire you." Then Penny would claim the client relationships were at risk and needed immediate leadership. Vernon would be the only viable option on such short notice. The calculated nature of it made my stomach turn. "And you believe that would have worked?" "It might have," Reggie admitted. "With you gone and Vernon positioned as the savior of our biggest accounts, I would have faced significant pressure to promote him immediately." The realization of how close they'd come to succeeding washed over me. "If I hadn't found that note—" "The position is still yours," Reggie said, "if you want it." I hesitated. "What about the others who knew? The colleagues who watched this happen and said nothing?" Reggie looked uncomfortable. "Office politics are complicated, Kit." "Yes," I agreed. "They are." I left without giving him an answer. The promotion had been my goal for months, but now it felt tainted. Would I always wonder who else had been complicit? Who else might be waiting for their chance to undermine me? The office was nearly empty as I walked back to my desk. Only Zoe from IT remained, typing furiously at her computer. "Thanks for your help yesterday," I said as I passed. She looked up, fingers pausing. "I heard what happened. Vernon had it coming." "You knew him well?" she snorted. "Well enough. He corrupted my database last month, then reported me for the system crash. Almost cost me my job." I stopped. He did what? Planted errors in the code, then acted like the hero who discovered the problem. Classic Vernon. She shrugged. No way to prove it was him, though. How many others? I asked quietly. Zoe's eyes met mine. More than you think. Vernon was methodical. Anyone he saw as competition. Anyone who didn't worship him. Anyone who called him out. They all had performance issues eventually. I sank into the chair beside her desk, mind racing. This wasn't just about me or the promotion. This was a pattern, one that Penny had enabled, perhaps even encouraged. Do you have records? I asked. I'm a systems administrator, Zoe replied with a small smile. I have records of everything. That night, instead of celebrating my narrow escape, I invited Zoe to my apartment. Over takeout and wine, she showed me what she'd been collecting for months. Evidence of Vernon's sabotage across multiple departments, affecting at least 7 employees. 3 had been fired, 2 had quit, 1 had been demoted. The last, Zoe herself, had narrowly escaped professional damage. Why didn't you report this? I asked, scrolling through the damning files. To who? Penny. She protected him. HR? They took his side every time. Zoe took a sip of wine. Besides, individual incidents look like mistakes or miscommunications. It's only when you see the pattern that it becomes clear. I thought about the people who'd lost their jobs, their reputations, their confidence, all because of Vernon's ambition and Penny's protection. My own narrow escape suddenly seemed less important compared to the wider damage they'd caused. Vernon's gone, I said slowly, but Penny's only suspended, and the culture that allowed this still exists. What are you thinking? Zoe asked. I closed her laptop, mind made up. I'm thinking that surviving their attack isn't enough. Not for me, and definitely not for everyone else they hurt. Revenge? Zoe raised an eyebrow. Justice, I corrected. And prevention. What they did to me, to us, it can't happen again. Zoe studied me for a long moment. You know, director positions have access to all departmental communications, past and present. The implication hung in the air between us. With the right position, I could expose not just what Vernon and Penny had done, but the systematic problems that had allowed their behavior to flourish. I haven't accepted the promotion yet, I said. Maybe you should. Zoe's eyes gleamed with something between mischief and vengeance. Sometimes you need to be inside the system to fix it. I picked up my phone and composed a brief message to Reggie. I'll take the position, starting Monday. So what's the plan? Zoe asked as I set down my phone. I smiled, the first genuine smile since finding Vernon's note. First, we gather everything you have. Then, we find everyone they hurt. After that, well, Penny only thinks she knows what revenge looks like. As we clinked glasses, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just anger or satisfaction, but purpose. Vernon and Penny had tried to destroy me, but instead, they'd created something more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Monday morning would arrive soon enough, and with it, a reckoning no one at Powell Marketing would ever forget. Monday morning arrived with a storm that matched my mood. Rain lashed against the windows as I walked into Powell Marketing wearing a dark blue dress I'd never worn to the office before. Symbolic new beginnings. The weekend had been a blur of preparation. Zoe and I had compiled a comprehensive list of Vernon's victims, reviewed all available evidence, and mapped out a strategy that walked the fine line between justice and career suicide. I'd slept maybe 6 hours total, but adrenaline kept me sharp. Reggie met me at reception, all smiles and performative enthusiasm. Ready for your first day as Director of Client Relations? More than ready, I replied, matching his professional tone. The office felt different as we walked through. Colleagues who had avoided eye contact on Thursday now offered congratulatory smiles. Amazing how quickly allegiances shifted when power changed hands. My new office, what would have been Vernon's if his plan had succeeded, was spacious with windows overlooking the city. Reggie handed me a temporary access card. It will set up your permanent credentials this afternoon, he explained. Full system access, departmental files, client database, everything you need. I nodded, setting my bag on the desk that now belonged to me. Any update on Penny? His smile tightened. Still suspended pending review. The board meets Wednesday to discuss next steps. And the staff who knew about Thursday's plan? Reggie shifted uncomfortably. We're handling each case individually. No need for you to worry about that now. Translation. They were protecting anyone valuable enough to keep. Of course, I said smoothly. I'll focus on stabilizing client relationships. After Reggie left, I sat at my new desk, allowing myself exactly 30 seconds to absorb the moment. Then I began. First, I sent meeting requests to 3 people: Talia from accounting, Devin from creative, and Mason from account services. All former colleagues who'd experienced mysterious performance issues after crossing paths with Vernon. Zoe's data had shown suspicious patterns around their evaluations. My office phone rang. It was Amara, the receptionist. "Director Ashmore," she said, the new title sounding strange. "There's a Marcus Hollister on line 1 for you." I picked up. "Marcus, thank you again for Thursday. Small price for 3 years of excellent service," he replied. "I'm calling because your CEO reached out this weekend, rather desperately trying to ensure we're not taking our business elsewhere." "And are you?" "That depends entirely on you. Vernon had been contacting me directly for weeks, claiming he was taking over our account. Said you were on your way out." My grip tightened on the phone. "When was the first contact?" "About 2 months ago. I ignored him initially, but he was persistent." 2 months. Well before the director position had even opened. Vernon's plan had been in motion longer than I'd realized. "I'd like to meet this week," I said. "There are some changes coming I think you should be aware of." "Intriguing. Lunch Wednesday? Perfect." Next, I logged into my email with my limited credentials. There was an all-staff message from Reggie announcing my promotion, carefully worded to avoid mentioning Thursday's events. The replies were already flooding in. Congratulations from people who'd witnessed my near downfall in silence. Talia arrived first, knocking tentatively on my open door. At 35, she was older than me by several years, with expertise that should have earned her a senior position long ago. "You wanted to see me?" she asked. "Close the door," I suggested. She did, taking a seat, with visible nervousness. "If this is about the Mitchell account reconciliation, I can explain the delay." "It's not," I interrupted gently. "It's about why you were passed over for senior financial analyst last year, despite having the strongest qualifications." Her expression shifted from anxiety to wariness. "That's ancient history." "Is it? Or is it part of a pattern involving Vernon and Penny?" Talia went very still. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I slid a folder across the desk. "These are records of file access logs showing Vernon viewing confidential financial reports he had no authorization for, right before errors appeared in your work." She opened the folder with shaking hands. "How did you get these?" "Does it matter? The question is, what happened after those errors were discovered?" Talia's professional demeanor cracked. "Penny called me careless. Said I clearly wasn't ready for advancement. The promotion went to Vernon's friend from college instead. Would you be willing to make a formal statement about this?" Her eyes widened. "Are you building a case?" "I'm seeking justice," I replied. "For all of us." By lunchtime, I'd spoken with all 3 former victims. Their stories followed the same pattern: Vernon undermining their work, Penny enabling the sabotage, careers derailed or stalled. Each had agreed to document their experiences, with varying degrees of reluctance. As I was reviewing their notes, my temporary access card flickered from red to green, and full director-level system privileges had been granted. I immediately logged into the secure server and began searching for Penny's archived emails. What I found exceeded my expectations. Dozens of messages between Penny and Vernon discussing problem employees and how to manage them out, references to our arrangement, and mutual advancement goals. The systematic dismantling of careers that stood in their way. Most damning was an email from 3 weeks ago. "Once Kit is gone, I'll need the regional VP to see you as the obvious choice for my replacement when I move up. The Mitchell presentation is our opportunity. Make sure her materials have those unfortunate errors we discussed." They hadn't just targeted me for a job. They'd been planning a complete leadership takeover, with Penny advancing to regional operations and Vernon taking her position. I was so absorbed in my discovery that I almost missed Celia from HR appearing in my doorway. "Kit, do you have a minute? It's about the incident." I closed the email window. "Of course." Celia closed the door behind her, looking uncharacteristically serious. "The board wants statements from everyone involved before Wednesday's meeting. Standard procedure. I'm happy to provide one. There's something else." She lowered her voice. "Penny is claiming you fabricated evidence against her and Vernon. Says you were jealous of their close working relationship and created false emails to sabotage them." My blood ran cold. "That's absurd." "I know," Celia assured me. "But she's worked here 12 years, has friends on the board. They're taking her claims seriously enough to launch a formal investigation." Into me? Into the entire situation. It is conducting a full system audit to verify the authenticity of all electronic evidence, including the files Zoe and I had accessed over the weekend. If they traced our digital footprints, when does this audit begin? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Tomorrow morning. I forced a smile. Thank you for the heads up. After Celia left, I immediately texted Zoe. It audit tomorrow. Need to talk as soon as possible. We met in the one place nobody would overhear us, the supply closet on the rarely used 5th floor. They'll find our searches, Zoe said bluntly. My access is legitimate, but they'll question why I was looking at HR files and executive emails. Can you cover our tracks? Not without making things worse. Deleting access logs would be like announcing our guilt. I leaned against a shelf of printer paper. So we're caught. Not necessarily. Zoe's expression turned calculating. What if we're not hiding anything? What if we're conducting our own official investigation? Explain. You're a director now. If you formally requested an investigation into potential ethics violations before the audit begins, our searches become legitimate. Penny would claim I'm retaliating. Not if you're not the only one asking questions. Zoe raised an eyebrow. How many victims did we identify? 7 confirmed, 3 more probable. And how many have agreed to come forward? A plan began forming in my mind, enough to create a pattern no one can ignore. That afternoon, I drafted an official memo to the board requesting an ethics investigation based on concerns raised by multiple employees. Talia, Devin, and Mason, all signed as witnesses. I submitted it at 4:57 p.m., just before the administrative deadline for board meeting agendas. By Tuesday morning, the office was humming with tension. Word had spread about both Penny's counter-accusations and my formal complaint. Battle lines were being drawn, with longtime employees largely supporting Penny, while newer staff rallied behind me. Reggie called me into his office before 9. This is getting out of hand, he said, my memo sitting on his desk. The board is concerned about the company's reputation. I'm concerned about its ethics, I countered. Kit, his tone turned patronizing. You won your battle. You got the promotion. Continuing this vendetta against Penny looks vindictive. Vendetta? I repeated. 7 careers were damaged or destroyed. This isn't about me anymore. The board sees it differently. They're prepared to offer Penny early retirement with full benefits if you'll drop this investigation. And sweep everything under the rug? I shook my head. Not happening. Reggie's expression hardened. Then you should know Penny's submitted evidence suggesting you and Vernon had a personal relationship that ended badly. She's claiming this is all motivated by romantic rejection. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Those private dinners, the confidence is shared. Vernon had apparently told Penny everything, twisted to serve their narrative. That's a lie, I said, though technically it wasn't entirely false. We had been close once, but I'd ended any potential romance when I realized his interest spiked after my successful projects. Truth doesn't always matter in these situations, Reggie said. Perception does. And right now, the perception is of a messy workplace drama rather than ethical violations. I left his office feeling the ground shifting beneath me. They were reframing the narrative, turning corporate sabotage into a spurned lover's revenge. The evidence I'd gathered suddenly seemed less compelling against that backdrop. By Wednesday morning, my position had weakened further. 2 of my witnesses had mysteriously withdrawn their statements. The IT audit had been expanded to include my personal devices. Marcus had called to reschedule our lunch, citing a conflict. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m., the same time Vernon had planned to fire me a week earlier. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. As I walked to the conference room, Zoe intercepted me in the hallway. They're going to offer you a deal, she whispered. Mutual non-disparagement. Everyone keeps their jobs. No one admits wrongdoing. How do you know? Because I just set up the presentation showing the proposed agreement. Classic corporate cover-up. My heart sank. A week of work, all the evidence gathered, the careers damaged, all to be brushed away in the name of company stability. I entered the boardroom with my head high despite the sickening feeling in my stomach. 12 board members sat around the massive table, with Reggie at the head. Penny sat on one side, looking confident. Kit, Reggie began, thank you for joining us. We've reviewed all submitted materials regarding the situation between you, Vernon, and Penny. I nodded, saying nothing. After careful consideration, we believe the most productive path forward is a mutual resolution. He slid a document toward me. This agreement stipulates that all parties cease investigation into past events, maintain confidentiality, and commit to professional collaboration moving forward. I didn't touch the paper, and if I refuse, one of the board members, an older man I recognized as the company founder, cleared his throat. Then, unfortunately, we would need to consider whether your continued employment serves the company's best interests. A clear threat. Sign or be fired. Exactly what Vernon and Penny had planned, just through different means. I looked around the table at these powerful people ready to sacrifice ethics for convenience. Then I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. Before I respond, I said calmly, "I'd like you all to listen to something." I pressed play. "Doesn't matter what actually happened," came Reggie's voice. "We need this to disappear before clients hear about it. Offer her the agreement. If she doesn't sign, terminate immediately and control the narrative." A woman's voice, Penny's, responded, "And my promotion to regional operations? Let's get through this first." But yes, the plan remains in place. I stopped the recording. The room had gone completely silent. "That conversation happened in your office this morning," I said to Reggie. "Before this meeting, you recorded us illegally," he sputtered. "Actually," came a new voice from the doorway. "It was recorded legally, through the company's own security system." Marcus Hollister stood there, along with a woman in a tailored suit I didn't recognize. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded the board chairman. Marcus stepped forward. "I'm here as both a concerned client and a potential investor. This is Elaine Torres, from the Department of Labor's Ethics Division." Elaine nodded. "We've received multiple complaints about systematic workplace harassment and retaliation at Powell Marketing. Given the pattern of allegations, we've opened a formal investigation." The board members exchanged alarmed glances. "My lunch cancellation was strategic," Marcus explained to me. "Elaine needed time to review the evidence before this meeting." "What evidence?" Reggie demanded. I smiled for the first time that day. "Everything. The emails between you and Penny planning leadership changes, the systematic sabotage of employees who stood in your way, the falsified performance reviews, the unauthorized access to secure files, and most importantly, and de Vlash, statements from every person whose career you damaged, including those who left the company." Elaine placed a thick folder on the table. "We have testimony from 11 former and current employees describing a pattern of workplace misconduct spanning 3 years." "This is absurd," Penny protested. "Kit is obviously retaliating because you and Vernon plotted to destroy her career?" Marcus interrupted. "That part is well documented, including your email admitting the revenge firing was your idea originally." The chairman looked stricken. "Reggie, is this true?" Before Reggie could respond, I placed another document on the table. "This is my resignation, effective immediately. I've accepted a position as Director of Client Services at Hollister Brands, where Marcus has assured me ethical business practices are more than just words in a mission statement." I stood, gathering my things. "The Department of Labor has everything they need to continue their investigation without me. I suggest you cooperate fully. Attempting to cover up labor violations only compounds the penalties." As I walked toward the door, the chairman called after me, "Kit, wait, perhaps we can discuss this reasonably." I turned back one last time. I tried reason. I tried evidence. I tried following proper channels. You chose to protect the powerful rather than the victims. Now you can explain that choice to federal investigators and your shareholders. Marcus held the door for me as stunned silence filled the room behind us. "Well played," he murmured as we walked away. "I had good help," I admitted, thinking of Zoe, Talia, and every other person who'd found the courage to speak up. At the elevator, I found Zoe waiting with a small box of my personal items. "Figured you might not want to clean out your office with everyone watching," she said. "Thank you." I hesitated. "For everything." She grinned. "Don't thank me yet. My resignation letter goes in tomorrow." Marcus mentioned his IT department needs a new systems administrator. "Already approved," I confirmed. "And we need an accounting director too, if Talia's interested." As we walked out of Powell Marketing for the last time, rain still fell outside, but the storm in my heart had cleared. Vernon was gone. Penny would follow. The company that had valued politics over people would face its reckoning without me. My revenge wasn't firing them or exposing them publicly or even taking their jobs. It was creating something better from the ashes of what they'd tried to destroy. A workplace where talent was rewarded, not punished. Where ambition didn't require sabotage. 6 months later, the Powell Marketing sign came down from the building. The company had been acquired after their stock plummeted, following the Labor Department's findings. Reggie and 4 board members had resigned. Penny had been terminated and was fighting a civil suit from former employees. Meanwhile, Hollister Brand's marketing division, staffed by many familiar faces, had just won its biggest client ever, the company that had acquired Powell's remains. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you take from others, but what you build for yourself. And sometimes, justice arrives in ways no one expects, not through a single dramatic moment, but through the collective courage of people who refuse to remain silent. If you've ever faced workplace betrayal or watched someone being unfairly targeted, drop a comment about how you handled it. Would you have done what Kit did, or taken a different approach? Like and subscribe for more stories about workplace justice. And share this with anyone who needs a reminder that speaking truth to power isn't just right. Sometimes, it's the ultimate revenge. The steam rising from the 12-hour reduced demi-glace suddenly felt suffocating as Graham leaned against the prep counter, arms crossed over his expensive button-down. His mouth twitched into what some might mistake for a smile. "Explain to me why the Chandler wedding party complained about lukewarm entrees," he said, tapping his watch. 200 guests, $30,000, and I'm getting texts about cold food. I wiped my hands on my apron. The venue changed the service time without telling us. We adjusted and still delivered everything within 10 minutes of... Stop. Graham held up one manicured hand. The client isn't happy, which means I'm not happy. My sous chef Danny shifted uncomfortably beside me, avoiding eye contact. 3 years I'd spent elevating this once struggling catering company into the most sought-after service in the metropolitan area. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, of creating menu concepts that won regional awards, of personally handling VIP clients who now booked 9 months in advance. "Look, this is uncomfortable," Graham continued, suddenly softer. "But we need to talk about your performance." My performance? The knife I'd been using to julienne vegetables stilled in my hand. "The truth is, you've been slipping. The Bentley corporate lunch last month, the missing vegetarian options, the Willow Museum gala, those undercooked shrimp that made someone ill." My mouth dropped open. "That wasn't. You've been distracted, overwhelmed. Maybe this level of responsibility isn't suited to you anymore." He slid a cream-colored envelope across the steel countertop, interrupting the careful mise en place I'd spent 2 hours arranging. It sat between us like a grenade. 3-month severance. We'll need you to clear out today. The kitchen around me blurred. Through the haze, I spotted Danny's wide eyes and something else. A small, unmistakable smile pulling at the corner of her mouth. Behind Graham stood Tessa, my once trusted assistant, already wearing my personal chef coat, the one with my name embroidered above the heart. She'd been in my home for dinner just last Sunday, asking detailed questions about my signature dishes, my supplier relationships. I'd shared everything. "We need a smooth transition," Graham continued. "Tessa will be taking over your position effective immediately. She's been shadowing your work for weeks in preparation." The betrayal hit like ice water. Weeks? They'd planned this for weeks? "The quarterly finance review is next week," I said, my voice hollow. "And the profit-sharing agreement? That's why this timing works well for everyone," Graham replied smoothly. "A clean break before the new quarter. 1 week. They were firing me 1 week before I would have received my percentage of the profits I'd helped create. 1 week before the bonus structure I'd negotiated during my last review would have matured." The realization must have shown on my face because Graham's expression hardened. "Security will escort you out. For everyone's comfort." I felt the eyes of every kitchen staff member burning into my back as a burly man in an ill-fitting suit appeared at my elbow. With mechanical movements, I untied my apron, the one I'd specially ordered with extra pockets for my tasting spoons and notebook, and placed it on the counter. "My recipes," I said. "My personal notes. Company property," Graham replied. "Created on company time." The security guard gripped my elbow with unnecessary force as I was marched past stations where I'd trained every single person. Past the kitchen where I'd created the lobster roulade that made the food critic from the city paper weep. Past the wall where my Chef of the Year certificate had already been removed. Through the dining room window, I caught sight of Tessa directing my team, already wearing my authority like a borrowed designer dress. Our eyes met through the glass. She looked away first. Outside, the guard released me with a small shove toward the parking lot. "Your personal belongings will be shipped," he muttered, almost apologetically. I stood alone in the spring sunshine, surrounded by the delivery trucks bringing ingredients for the weekend's events. Events I had planned, menus I had created, clients I had cultivated. The envelope crumpled in my fist, its contents already feeling insufficient for the life they had just upended. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "How's your day going, sweetie? You working late again tonight?" I couldn't answer. Instead, I sat in my car for 47 minutes, watching the kitchen door, waiting for someone, anyone, to come out and say this was all a mistake. No one came. If this story hits close to home for you, if you've ever been blindsided professionally or personally, take a second to like and subscribe. I share these real-life dramas because we all need to know we're not alone when life pulls the rug out from under us. Comment below if you've ever experienced workplace betrayal and how you handled it. Now, let's get back to what happened next. My name is Linnea Parker. At least, that's what my friends call me. In professional kitchens, I was simply chef for most of my career, a title I'd earned through burns, cuts, 16-hour shifts, and culinary school debt I'm still paying off at 34. The week after my dismissal passed in a blur of numbness and disbelief. I applied to 7 restaurants, but word spreads quickly in the culinary world. Creative differences was the euphemism Graham's company used when called for references, spoken with just enough hesitation to raise alarm bells. By week 3, my savings were dwindling. I started selling kitchen equipment I'd collected over the years, the Japanese knives I'd saved for months to buy, the copper pans inherited from my grandmother. Each sale felt like parting with a piece of my identity. Former clients reached out with confusion. "We specifically requested you for our anniversary dinner," one couple wrote. "They said you left for personal reasons. Is everything okay?" I didn't know how to respond. How could I explain I'd been discarded like spoiled produce, that the company had deemed me rotten when I was still perfectly good? Then came the rumors. A former colleague texted, "Heard you were drinking on the job." Another, "Someone said food costs rose 20% under your management." All lies, all carefully crafted to justify my removal. 6 weeks after my dismissal, I was considering a job at a grocery store deli counter when my phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Unknown number. "Hello?" I answered, voice thick with interrupted sleep, heavy breathing, then a whisper. "Is this Linnea, the former head chef at Taste Creators?" I sat up. "Who's asking?" "It's Tessa, my replacement, my betrayer." I nearly hung up, but something in her voice, a tremor, a vulnerability, stopped me. "They're going to fire me tomorrow," she said, words tumbling out between quiet sobs, "just like they did to you." "Performance issues?" I guessed, bitterness coating my tongue. "Yes, but it's impossible," she insisted. "They've been sabotaging me. Orders get changed after I submit them. Delivery times get mixed up. Someone deleted all my digital recipe files from the system." My grip tightened on the phone. "That's terrible, Tessa," I said flatly. "Really breaks my heart for you." "Please," she begged. "I know I don't deserve your help, but there's more you need to know." "I'm listening." "They do this every quarter." I overheard Graham and the finance director at happy hour. "They fire senior staff right before bonus periods to avoid payouts. There's a whole system. They've done this to 5 chefs before you." The revelation should have been shocking, but instead, it settled over me with disturbing clarity. Of course, it hadn't been personal. It was calculated. "That's not all," Tessa continued, her voice dropping even lower. "They're cutting corners everywhere, using expired ingredients, mislabeling allergens. I found invoices showing they bill clients for premium ingredients but use cheap substitutes." My mind flashed to the undercooked shrimp incident Graham had mentioned, the one where a guest got sick. I'd been bewildered because I'd personally checked every temperature. Had they deliberately served bad food and blamed me? "Tomorrow, they're catering the governor's charity gala," Tessa whispered. "All those violations will be present. They're serving farmed salmon labeled as wild, caught to the health commissioner himself." After hanging up, I paced my small apartment until sunrise, rage building with each step, not just for myself, but for every chef before me who had been discarded, for the clients who had been cheated, for the diners potentially exposed to foodborne illness. By morning, something had crystallized within me, harder than diamond, sharper than my best knife. I picked up my phone and called Danny, my former sous chef. We hadn't spoken since my dismissal. "Linnea?" she answered, surprised. "I've been meaning to call you." "No time," I cut in. "I need to know if you've noticed anything strange with the inventory or invoices." A pause. "How did you know?" "Tessa called me. They're planning to fire her tomorrow." Danny exhaled. I've been documenting everything. The substitutions, the mislabeling. I was going to call you when I had enough proof. The governor's gala is tonight, I said. We don't have much time. What are you planning? Danny asked, a note of worry in her voice. I stared at the chef's knife I'd kept, the only one I couldn't bear to sell, my reflection distorted in its polished surface. Justice, I replied, but I need your help. By noon, I'd assembled an unlikely alliance. Danny, the sous chef whose silence during my firing still stung, had arrived at my apartment with a thumb drive and apologetic eyes. I thought speaking up would cost me my job, she admitted, placing the drive on my kitchen counter like an offering. I didn't know they were planning to cycle through all of us. The drive contained photos of inventory sheets with dates crossed out and rewritten, screenshots of altered invoices, and a log of menu changes made after approval. Small pieces of a larger deception. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Graham moved up my performance review. It's happening at 5 today instead of tomorrow. He wants me fresh for the governor's gala tonight. They're accelerating the timeline, I told Danny. We need more evidence. I know someone who might help, Danny replied, hesitation in her voice. Marcel. Marcel had been the pastry chef before my arrival. His sudden departure had been explained away as pursuing other opportunities, but he'd never reappeared in any local restaurant. Now I understood why. When we arrived at his small bakery across town, the bell above the door announced us with a cheerful jingle that contrasted with Marcel's wary expression. You, he said, recognizing me instantly. The chef who replaced me. The chef who got replaced, I corrected. Just like you. His eyes narrowed, measuring the truth in my words. What do you want? To stop them from doing this to anyone else. 20 minutes and 2 espressos later, Marcel pulled out a leather-bound notebook from behind a row of specialty flowers. I kept records, he explained, flipping through pages of meticulous notes. Dates, times, altered orders. Graham claimed I'd overspent on ingredients, but I tracked every penny. They moved money around, made it look like my department was bleeding cash. He turned to a page marked with a red tab. This is the smoking gun. Email printouts where Graham discusses the quarterly talent refresh with accounting. They specifically target higher-paid staff before bonus periods. I skimmed the emails, my hands trembling. This is from 2 years ago. They've been doing this that long? Longer, Marcel confirmed. But no one's been able to prove it. We're all just disgruntled ex-employees with chips on our shoulders, right? The 3 of us huddled around my kitchen table, piecing together a fragmented history of deception. Marcel called 2 more former employees, a server named Jordan who'd been fired for mishandling client funds that had actually been skimmed by management, and a former event coordinator named Ash, who had documentation of venue complaints that had been hidden from me. By 4 o'clock, we had assembled enough evidence to show a pattern, but nothing definitively criminal that would trigger immediate action. We need something happening in real time, I said, frustrated. Something that can't be explained away. My phone buzzed again. Tessa, meeting in 30 minutes. What should I do? I typed quickly. Record everything if you can. We're working on a plan. Danny looked up from the stack of invoices she'd been studying. What about the governor's gala tonight? If they're serving mislabeled food to state officials, even if we report it, inspections take time to arrange, I countered. By then, the evidence would be eaten or discarded. Marcel was pacing, rolling a pastry pin between his palms absently. What if we had someone on the inside? Someone who could point inspectors to specific violations in real time. We all turned to my phone as it lit up with Tessa's reply. They just demoted me to prep cook for tonight, said my leadership isn't consistent enough for such an important event. Graham is taking over as head chef. I'm still expected to work the gala. I looked up at my 3 companions. We have our inside person. While Danny coached Tessa on what evidence to gather, I remembered something, or rather someone. Eliza Chang, a culinary school friend who now produced the Consumer Watchdog segment for the local news station. We'd lost touch over the years, but her investigative pieces on restaurant health violations had made her somewhat of a crusader in the food world. The call connected on the 3rd ring. Linnea Parker, she answered, surprise evident in her voice. It's been ages. I have a story for you, I said, skipping pleasantries. A catering company serving potentially dangerous food to the governor's charity gala tonight. Silence, then. That's a serious allegation. What evidence do you have? Doctored invoices, mislabeled ingredients, documentation of a pattern of firings to avoid paying bonuses, and a current employee who can confirm everything in real time tonight. This catering company, Eliza said carefully. Would it happen to be your former employer? Yes. Another pause. Which makes you a disgruntled ex-employee with a potential vendetta? I have 4 other former employees with me right now, all with similar stories and documentation. This isn't about revenge, Eliza. It's about public safety. I could almost hear her journalistic instincts warring with her skepticism. The gala starts at 7. I need to see your evidence by 5 if we're going to mobilize a team. The next hour passed in a frenzy of scanning documents, organizing digital files, and creating a timeline of abuses. I kept checking my phone, waiting for updates from Tessa. Nothing. At 4:55, as we prepared to meet Eliza, my phone finally buzzed. I'm fired, Tessa wrote. Graham caught me taking photos of the salmon packaging. Security escorted me out. My heart sank. Our inside person is gone, I told the others. Marcel slammed his pastry pin down. That's it then. We're back to being disgruntled ex-employees with no way to prove current violations. The room deflated, our momentum evaporating. I stared at the collection of evidence. So much proof of past wrongdoing, yet nothing that could stop tonight's deception. My phone buzzed again. Tessa, but they forgot something. I still have my staff access card, and I know exactly where they're storing the counterfeit ingredients. Hope flickered back to life. She can still get us in, I told the group. It's too risky, Danny argued. If she's caught trespassing after being fired, that's criminal. I'll go, I decided. I know the kitchen layout better than anyone. You're the most recognizable, Marcel countered. You were the face of the company for 3 years. Before we could resolve the debate, another text arrived from Tessa. The health inspector is already here. Pre-event walkthrough. Graham is handling it personally. That's our chance, I said. While Graham is distracted with the inspector, we can document everything and get out. Danny shook her head. The security guard who escorted you out that day, he knows your face. Mine too, added Marcel. A heavy silence fell over the room as we realized our plan was crumbling. Then Jordan, who had been quietly observing until now, spoke up. They don't know me, she said. I worked front of house, and it was years ago. I could go with Tessa. We all turned to look at her. Jordan's delicate features and quiet demeanor made her easy to overlook, but there was a determined set to her jaw. Are you sure? I asked. She nodded. I lost my apartment after they fired me. Had to move back with my parents at 29. I want them to face consequences. The plan came together quickly. Jordan would meet Tessa at the service entrance. Using Tessa's access card, they'd slip into the kitchen during the pre-event inspection. Their job, document the mislabeled ingredients, take photos of altered invoices, and get out undetected. Meanwhile, the rest of us would meet Eliza with our compiled evidence, preparing her for what Jordan and Tessa might find. As we gathered our materials, a notification popped up on my phone, a social media alert for taste creators. They had just posted photos of the preparation for tonight's gala. In one image, Graham stood proudly beside a display of what was labeled as wild-caught Copper River salmon, his arm around the shoulder of the health commissioner. My stomach clenched. The deception was already underway. We arrived at the news station just before 5:30. Eliza met us in the lobby, professional skepticism evident in her stance. But as we laid out our evidence, Marcel's notebooks, Danny's photographs, the email printouts, her expression shifted from doubt to concern to outrage. This is systematic, she said, reviewing the pattern of firings. And if what you're saying about tonight's gala is true, we have 2 people inside right now confirming, I told her. Eliza picked up her phone. I'm calling my camera crew, and I know someone at the health department who won't wait for bureaucratic approval to act on this. For the first time in 6 weeks, I felt something other than helplessness and rage. I felt hope. Then my phone rang, Tessa's number. We're in trouble, she whispered, ambient kitchen noise nearly drowning her out. Security spotted Jordan. I'm hiding in the dry storage closet. Did you get evidence of the salmon? I asked urgently. Yes, photos of everything. The original packaging showing farm-raised, the fake labels they created for service. But Jordan has the phone with the pictures, and they're questioning her now. My momentary hope curdled into dread. If Jordan was caught, if the evidence was discovered and deleted, we'd be back where we started. Where's Graham? I asked. Still, with the health inspector in the dining room. They're doing the formal walkthrough before guests arrive. I covered the phone and relayed the situation to the others. The gala starts in 90 minutes, Eliza said, checking her watch. We need that evidence now if we're going to stop this. Danny suddenly straightened. I just remembered, The kitchen has a delivery entrance at the back, near the dumpsters. It's only used for morning shipments. No one watches it this late. Can you guide Tessa there? I asked. Danny nodded, taking my phone. As she gave detailed directions, Marcel leaned closer to me. Even if Tessa escapes with the evidence, it might not be enough, he warned. Graham is convincing. He'll have explanations ready for any accusation. What are you suggesting? Marcel's eyes took on a calculating gleam I'd never seen during his pastry demonstrations. We need to catch them in the act. Not just with evidence of preparation, but with the actual fraudulent food being served to officials. He was right. Documentation could be disputed, explanations crafted. But if the health commissioner himself was served mislabeled food in front of witnesses… Eliza, I said, turning to the journalist who was coordinating with her camera crew. How quickly can you get to the gala? 20 minutes with traffic. Why? Because we're not just going to reveal what they're planning to do, I replied, a plan crystallizing. We're going to catch them in the act of doing it. Danny ended the call with Tessa, her expression grim. Security has locked down the main kitchen exits. She's going to try the delivery door, but she's not sure she can make it without being seen. What about Jordan? I asked, still being questioned. If they search her phone, the evidence that could expose years of deception and potentially dangerous food practices was now in the hands of a server I barely knew, being detained by the very people she was helping to expose. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Jordan. Using kitchen phone. They took my cell. Security office. Help. Time seemed to freeze as we processed Jordan's desperate message. Her phone, containing crucial photographic evidence, was now in the hands of Taste Creators Security. We need to get her out, I said, already moving toward the door. And do what? Marcel grabbed my arm. Storm the place? They'll call the police, have us arrested for trespassing. If we do nothing, Jordan takes the fall while Graham serves fraudulent food to state officials. I countered. I can't let that happen. Eliza, who had been quietly making calls, suddenly looked up. My news van will be ready in 10 minutes. Health department contact is meeting us there. That might be too late for Jordan, Danny warned. My phone buzzed again. Tessa made it out? Meeting point? It was Jordan, still using the kitchen phone. Tell her to meet us at the north parking lot, I replied, relief washing over me. At least Tessa had escaped. Can't. Security watching me. Phone access. Only because they think I'm calling for ride. A plan began forming in my mind. Risky. Potentially disastrous. But our only option. I texted back. Keep stalling. Help coming. To the group, I said, we need a distraction. Something big enough to pull security away from Jordan. Like what? Marcel asked. Like a health emergency in the kitchen right before the governor arrives. I replied grimly. Understanding dawned on their faces. Danny was already nodding. The fire alarm would evacuate everyone. Too broad, I countered. We need something specific to the kitchen that would force them to release Jordan to deal with it. Ash, who had been quietly analyzing the venue layout, spoke up. The water main. It runs through the security office to the kitchen. If there was a burst pipe, how would we manage that from outside? Marcel asked skeptically. Eliza interrupted. We don't need an actual emergency. We just need them to believe there's one. She held up her press badge. Official media arriving early for the governor. While I'm getting the official tour from whoever's in charge, my cameraman can create enough confusion to get Jordan out. It wasn't perfect, but it was all we had. As we piled into cars to head for the venue, I texted Tessa to confirm her location. No response. The knot in my stomach tightened. 20 minutes later, we parked across from the gleaming event center where the governor's charity gala was being set up. Black-tied waitstaff hurried through the main entrance carrying trays of champagne flutes. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the door, still empty of guests who would arrive in the next hour. Eliza straightened her blazer and checked her reflection in the car window. Remember, my job is to distract Graham. Marcel, you handle the kitchen staff. Linnea, you and Danny focus on getting Jordan out. What about me? Ash asked. You're our lookout, I told her. If anything goes wrong, you call Eliza's cameraman to abort. As Eliza strode confidently toward the main entrance, press credentials prominently displayed, the rest of us circled around to the service entrance. Through a side window, I could see kitchen staff in frantic pre-service motion. Graham moved among them, checking plates, his expression severe. There, Danny whispered, pointing to a door marked security at the end of a short hallway. My phone buzzed with a message from Eliza. In position. Graham giving tour. Go now. Marcel pushed through the service entrance first. his pastry chef whites still commanding enough respect that no one immediately questioned his presence. Danny and I followed, keeping our heads down. The kitchen was chaotic. Servers rushing, line cooks calling orders, Graham's voice rising above it all, as he proudly showed Eliza their operation. I kept my back to him, moving purposefully toward the security office. Through the small window in the door, I could see Jordan sitting in a chair, a security guard scrolling through her phone. My heart raced. Any minute, he might find the incriminating photos. Marcel gave us a nod, and then deliberately knocked over a tray of appetizers near the main kitchen station. "What is this?" he shouted, his voice carrying across the kitchen. "These crab cakes are stone cold. Who's responsible?" All eyes turned toward the commotion, including the security guards. In that moment of distraction, Danny slipped into the office. "Fire in Prep Station 3, she yelled, poking her head back out seconds later. "We need everyone now." The guard hesitated, looking between Jordan and the kitchen where staff were now rushing toward Marcel's staged chaos. "Go!" I heard Danny urge him. "I'll watch her." The moment he left, I slipped into the office. Jordan's eyes widened in recognition. "Where's your phone?" I asked urgently. "Top drawer?" she replied, nodding toward the desk. I yanked it open, grabbing the phone just as shouts from the kitchen grew louder. Marcel had escalated his distraction, now arguing loudly with Graham about food temperatures, while Eliza recorded every word. "We need to go," I told Jordan. "Now." We slipped out through a back hallway, Danny following close behind. Through the kitchen windows, I caught a glimpse of Graham's face turning from confusion to rage as he spotted Marcel, a chef he'd fired years ago, standing in his kitchen. Outside, we sprinted to the parking lot where Ash waited with the car running. "Tessa?" I asked breathlessly as we piled in. "No sign of her," Ash replied, and no response to texts. Jordan unlocked her phone with trembling fingers, pulling up the photo gallery. "It's all here," she said, relief evident in her voice. Everything Tessa and I documented. The mislabeled salmon packages, the altered invoices, even screenshots of work schedules showing how they cycle through chefs before bonus periods. I texted Eliza. "We got it. Evidence secure." Her reply came immediately. "Health inspector already here. Bring it now." We drove around to the main entrance where Eliza stood with her cameraman and a stern-looking woman holding a clipboard, the health inspector who'd arrived for Eliza's anonymous tip. "This is Regina Moss," Eliza introduced us. "Senior health inspector. She's very interested in what you've found." As Jordan presented her evidence, Regina's expression darkened. "Mislabeling allergens is a serious violation," she said, swiping through the photos. "And this farmed salmon being sold as wild-caught, that's consumer fraud. The governor and health commissioner will be served this food in less than an hour," I pointed out. Regina straightened her jacket. "Not if I have anything to say about it." What happened next unfolded like a scene from a movie. Regina, flanked by two assistant inspectors who had just arrived, marched through the main doors with Eliza's news camera rolling behind them. We followed at a distance, watching as they headed straight for the kitchen. Graham's face when he saw Regina enter his domain shifted from professional charm to barely concealed panic. "Inspector Moss, we've already completed our pre-event walkthrough." "This is a follow-up inspection," Regina replied coolly. "We've received concerning information about tonight's menu." As Regina began her inspection, methodically checking labels against inventory and questioning staff, Graham's gaze swept the room, landing on our group, watching from the doorway. His eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in fury when he saw me. "You," he seethed, starting toward me. "You're behind this." Before he could reach us, Regina called out, "Mr. Graham, please explain why this farmed Atlantic salmon packaging is in your refrigerator when your menu lists wild-caught Copper River salmon." The kitchen fell silent. Every staff member froze, watching as Graham fumbled for an explanation. That's a mistake. We received a mixed shipment." "A mistake?" Regina pointed to a stack of altered labels on a prep table. "These pre-printed labels telling a different story suggest otherwise." As Graham struggled to contain the situation, a commotion at the service entrance drew everyone's attention. Tessa stumbled in, clutching a laptop. "I have everything," she announced, her voice carrying across the now silent kitchen. "The entire system. How they track which employees to fire before bonus periods. How they substitute ingredients while charging premium prices." She set the laptop down in front of Regina. "This spreadsheet shows every chef they've cycled through over the past 5 years. And this folder contains altered invoices going back 3 years." Graham lunged for the computer, but one of Regina's assistants stepped between them. "That's private company property," he protested. "It's evidence," Regina corrected him. Eliza's cameraman captured everything: Graham's growing desperation, Regina's methodical documentation of violations, the staff's shocked expressions as years of deception unraveled before their eyes. Within 20 minutes, Regina had seen enough. "I'm shutting down this operation, effective immediately. This facility will not be serving food tonight or any night until a complete investigation is conducted." Graham's face had gone ashen. "You can't do this. The governor will be here in 30 minutes. The governor will be particularly interested to know he was about to be served mislabeled food," Regina replied. "As will the health commissioner." As Regina made calls to officially close the venue, Eliza approached me with her microphone. "Chef Parker, as the former head chef who was terminated right before your profit sharing would have vested, how do you feel seeing these violations exposed?" I looked directly into the camera, years of suppressed emotion rising to the surface. "This isn't about me. It's about every chef who was discarded to pad profit margins. It's about every guest who trusted this company with their health and safety. Some things matter more than money. Integrity in the kitchen is one of them." The news segment aired that night, leading with footage of health inspectors shutting down the governor's gala just minutes before guests were scheduled to arrive. By morning, Taste Creators' reputation was in tatters. Their phone lines were flooded with calls from concerned past clients and canceled future bookings. 3 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from the governor's office. "Miss Parker, this is Andrea from Governor Hollister's staff. We were impressed with your commitment to food safety standards, and we'd like to discuss an opportunity." The opportunity, as it turned out, was catering the rescheduled charity gala. The governor had been following the story and wanted to make a statement about supporting ethical business practices. I said yes immediately, then called Marcel, Danny, Jordan, Ash, and Tessa. "How would you all feel about working together again? I have our first client." We served the governor's gala in a rented commercial kitchen, using quality ingredients exactly as advertised on our carefully crafted menu. The event was a resounding success, with multiple guests requesting our information for future events. As we cleaned up that night, exhausted but exhilarated, Tessa approached me. "I never properly apologized," she said quietly, "for taking your position, for not speaking up when they fired you. You made it right in the end," I assured her. "That's what matters." Marcel appeared at my side, champagne bottle in hand. "A toast," he declared, pouring glasses for everyone, "to second chances." "And to karma," added Jordan with a grin. I raised my glass, looking around at these people who had transformed from strangers united by shared injustice into something resembling a family, to new beginnings. 2 months later, we signed the lease on our own commercial kitchen space. 6 months after that, we were booked solid, with a waiting list. We called our company Second Course, a name that made us smile each time we saw it on our chef coats. Our business model was simple but revolutionary in our industry. Profit, sharing for all staff from day one, transparent ingredient sourcing, and a zero-tolerance policy for cutting corners. On the 1-year anniversary of the night Taste Creators was shut down, I received an email notification. Graham's trial for consumer fraud and labor violations was scheduled to begin next month. The email included a witness list with my name at the top. Some might call what happened that night at the gala revenge. I prefer to think of it as justice, not just for me, but for every chef whose passion and talent were exploited by people who saw food only as a path to profit. If you've ever stood up against workplace injustice or had to rebuild after being unfairly pushed out, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. This channel is dedicated to sharing real experiences that remind us we're never as alone as we might feel in our darkest moments. Like and subscribe if you want more stories about professional comebacks and the sweet taste of justice served properly, not cold, but at precisely the right temperature.